Have you ever threatened to harm anybody?
Probably.
Okay.
I'm human.
Police had been searching for 3 years for the person who stabbed Stephanie Sipe to death in her home. Finally, Edwin Gilks pointed the finger at Michael Hetrick.
Hetrick was apparently one of these people who wasn't shy about talking about his previous crimes, including killing people.
Hetrick, an admitted drug dealer, had a history of violence against women and threatened to cut women's throats.
It's kind of strange if you think about it, because there was a lot of information even then, and that we've discovered since the trial, that Hetrick was just not a reliable witness. He had mental health problems. He had a history of serious violence, including violence against women. I spoke with several women who were scared of Hetrick and who Hetrick had threatened to stab or to kill.
I mean, he was a very violent boyfriend. I think I remember that this girlfriend was saying that he just about choked her to death one time.
Hetrick initially told police he did not know Ivan Telugus, had never visited Harrisonburg, Virginia, and did not know anything about Stephanie's murder.
Do you know a gentleman named Ivan Telugus?
As I said before, I've never heard of him.
Did anybody ever approach you to murder anybody?
Not that I'm aware of. I think I'd remember something like that.
I was going to say, I hope you'd remember something.
Yeah.
During a recorded interview over 2 hours long, investigator Whitfield supplied Hetrick with details about his investigation of the case and his own theory of Stephanie's murder, and made it clear that Hetrick had to implicate Ivan Telugus to avoid the death penalty himself.
And when he said he didn't know who Ivan was, they made sure that he knew, and they made sure that Hetrick knew that the only way he could avoid a death sentence was to give them Ivan, and so he did.
Police warned Hetrick they had a warrant to compare his DNA to the blood found at Stephanie's apartment. They provided Hetrick with all of the details of the story he needed to tell to save his own life. Whitfield gave Hetrick details of the crime, including his supposed motive of avoiding child support, said he believed Ivan paid for the murder, gave an idea of how much he thought Ivan paid, and the narrow window of time during which the murder must have been committed. With Hetrick cornered, Whitfield took a very unusual step. He called Commonwealth's attorney Marcia Garst on the telephone in the middle of the interrogation.
On the recorded statement, they actually called the Commonwealth attorney, Marcia Garst, and she said that this is his only chance. If he doesn't cooperate right now, the deal's off.
She promised Hetrick she would not seek the death penalty against him if he would give them Ivan. He took the deal and repeated Whitfield's story. Hetrick said Ivan drove him and Gilks down to Harrisonburg and dropped them off near Stephanie's apartment. Then Ivan returned to Pennsylvania. Hetrick claimed that Ivan hired Gilks to murder Stephanie, but that Hetrick took over after Gilks didn't follow through.
Tunnel vision played a really big part in the interrogation of Michael Hetrick, in that the investigators went in there. They weren't seeking information. They had developed their theory already. They thought it was true. So all they were trying to do was confirm what they believed to be true. They weren't interested in looking at anything else that contradicted that. That's a form of tunnel vision called confirmation bias. When evidence that doesn't match your theory is ignored or dismissed, and evidence that does fit your theory is embraced. And that happens throughout this entire interrogation. There was at one point when Whitfield told Hetrick, look, Ivan's the guy I'm looking at. Ivan's the guy that I want. I spent the last 3 years of my life tracking Ivan Telugus, and I'm going to get him. Whitfield has confirmed, this is what I want to hear from you. And in order for you not to be put to death, in order for you to escape the death penalty, that is what you have to repeat back to me. That is what I have to hear out of your mouth. And Hetrick is like puzzled. I mean, he's going, my God, you're willing to give a guy who butchered this woman a break just because you want this other guy so bad. It doesn't matter if he did it or not. You want him so bad, I'm going to give him to you. I'm going to escape. You know, there's a lot of people who don't understand the concept of false confessions, that why would somebody confess to a crime that they didn't commit? But look at this case. This is a guy, Hedrick actually committed this crime. He killed this woman. He knew that they had evidence of that and that they were going to be able to convict him and that he was facing the death penalty. He was given an out. He was told, if you tell us what we want to hear, if you give up this guy, then you escape this inevitable consequence. And that's a much easier concept to understand than maybe a false confession where you're totally putting everything on yourself.
At trial, Hedrick, Gilks, and Safonov delivered on their promise to testify and implicate Ivan. Gilks also testified that Ivan had been involved in another murder in Ephrata, Pennsylvania.
It came out that there were federal officers who had information that, this Ephrata murder never happened, and they tried to provide it, and the Commonwealth's attorney didn't want to hear it. So I think this is one of those cases where you have law enforcement officials who are so focused on someone so early on and so convinced that their own theory is right that they're willing to ignore everything else in order to prove themselves correct.
The Supreme Court of Virginia later held that jurors had to believe the testimony of all three in order to convict Ivan of capital murder. At Ivan's sentencing, Prosecutor Garst argued that jurors should sentence Ivan to death because he could, quote, dial up a murder from prison at any time. She told jurors that they should remember Gilks' testimony that Ivan had been involved in another murder in Ephrata and that this showed a pattern of how Ivan solved his problems. The argument worked. Terrified jurors asked the judge if Ivan knew their names and contact information. The judge said that it was standard procedure that the defense be provided jurors' names, addresses, and occupations. Shortly after learning this, the jury sentenced Ivan to death. Following the trial, two of the prosecution's key witnesses came forward to tell the truth. Ivan was innocent.